All right, welcome to another deep dive. You know how this works. We're all about getting to the heart of really interesting ideas without wading through a ton of information.
Yeah, cutting through the noise, that's what we're here for.
Exactly. And today we're taking a deep dive into Philosophy's Guide to Happiness by Johnny Thompson from Big Think. I think a lot of people are going to be really interested in this one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, who doesn't want to be happier?
Right. But, not just like, oh, I ate a donut, I'm happy.
Yeah,
We're talking about that deep, like really meaningful happiness.
exactly. It's about understanding what a flourishing life really looks like, you know? What does it actually mean to live well? And Thompson, he's written a lot for Big Think. Plus, he's got these books, Mini Philosophy and Mini Big Ideas. He's got a real talent for making some pretty complex ideas easy to grasp.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in this piece, his main argument is so interesting. He's saying that happiness isn't just this fleeting emotion, like something that comes and goes. He's saying it's a much deeper, more lasting state of being.
It is. It's like a fundamental shift in how you view happiness.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Thompson starts off talking about a philosophical heat map, which I thought was a really cool concept. What did you think about that when you first read it?
I thought it was such a brilliant way to show right off the bat that this desire for happiness, it's not just some new thing, like we're not the first generation to be obsessed with it.
Right.
What he's saying is this is a universal human thing. Like people have been searching for happiness for as long as we've been around. You look back through history, ancient Greece, Daoist China, the Islamic Golden Age, all the way up to now, and you see thinkers from all these different times and cultures wrestling with this same question. And it just highlights how important and how enduring this pursuit of happiness is.
Yeah, it's like we're all, I don't know, it's like we're all tuned to the same frequency no matter where we are in time or place.
It's like we all share this one fundamental drive.
Totally. Okay, so let's jump into Thompson's first big pillar.
hmm
Happiness is not the same as pleasure. This feels like a super crucial distinction to make, especially these days, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're constantly being told that happiness is all about instant gratification, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
get what you want when you want it. But if you go back to ancient Greece, the philosophers back then, they had a much more nuanced view.
Oh,
They
okay.
actually had two different words for it. They had hedonia, which is basically like that immediate sensory kind of pleasure, think of a sugar rush or something. And then they had eudaimonia, which is a much richer and more fulfilling concept. It's about flourishing, living a life that's actually good and meaningful.
So it's not just about, getting a little hit of dopamine
Yeah.
every time something good happens.
Right, exactly. It's more like, okay, imagine you could have a big plate of junk food that makes you feel amazing for like 5 minutes.
Right.
Or you could have a really nourishing meal that, yeah, it might not give you that instant high, but it's going to contribute to your overall well-being in the long run.
Oh, yeah, I like that. That's a great way to put it. So it's like the difference between a quick spike and then like, a steady climb.
Exactly.
And then Thompson brings in the Buddhist perspective on desire, which adds a whole other layer to this,
Right,
right?
it's so insightful because the Buddhists, they say, look, yeah, when you get something you want, you're probably going to feel happy. Like, duh, right. But the thing is, desires, by their very nature, never really go away. So even when you get what you want, there's always going to be something else you start wanting.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
It's like you're trying to empty the ocean with a bucket.
You're never going to get there.
You're never going to get there. So if you base your happiness on getting the next thing you desire, you're essentially on this treadmill, just going and never really reaching a place of contentment.
It's like, finally, you get the thing you've been wanting. But then almost instantly, you're like, okay, what's next? What else do I need?
Totally. And then Thompson brings up Kierkegaard, and he paints this like really vivid picture of what this looks like, taken to the extreme.
Oh, yeah, what was that about?
So Kierkegaard, in his book, The Seducer's Diary, he's got this character who's constantly chasing pleasure. Like he's all about sensual experiences, indulgence, you name it. But what happens to him? Does he find happiness? Nope. He ends up feeling completely empty.
Oh, wow.
Even though he's surrounded by all this stuff that's supposed to make him happy, he's actually miserable.
That's kind of bleak.
Yeah, but it's a really powerful illustration of what Thompson is saying. A life that's just focused on pleasure without any deeper meaning or purpose is ultimately going to leave you feeling hollow. So for anyone listening, the big takeaway here is if you want that deep, genuine happiness, you got to look beyond those quick hits of pleasure.
So we're starting to really redefine what happiness is here. All right, let's move on to the second pillar, which is all about moderation. Now, this idea of finding balance seems to come up in a lot of different philosophies and traditions. Why do you think that is?
It's really fascinating, isn't it? Like this idea of the middle way or the golden mean, it's a pretty common thread.
Yeah.
You see it in the Greeks, in Buddhism with the Eightfold Path, in Taoism with its emphasis on harmony. There's this understanding that if you go too far in any one direction, you end up out of balance.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
And when you're out of balance, you can't really flourish. So they're saying that moderation, finding that sweet spot, that's essential for a good life.
And I think the most famous example of this is probably Aristotle's golden mean, right? How would we explain that to someone who's never heard of it?
Yeah, so Aristotle, he was all about finding the middle ground between two extremes. He said that virtue usually lies in that sweet spot. So take courage, for example. If you have too little courage, you're cowardly, right? But if you have too much, you're reckless. True courage is finding that balance, knowing when to be bold and when to be cautious.
Oh, yeah, okay. That makes sense.
And you can apply this to so many areas of life. You know, how much you work, how much you eat, how much you spend, how much you socialize. It's about finding that sustainable middle ground, that place where you can thrive without burning yourself out or going to extremes.
It's not about being, boring or never doing anything fun.
Yeah.
It's about being mindful and finding that
Yeah,
balance.
exactly.
And Thompson also uses this really cool Daoist metaphor about navigating a thorny forest. I thought that was such a great image. What did you think about that one?
Oh, I love that metaphor. It really captures the idea that the path to a truly fulfilling life, it's not always easy to see, you know?
Yeah.
You might see all these paths that look really appealing, like maybe they promise quick rewards or instant gratification, but they often lead to more trouble down the line.
Right. The easy road isn't always the best one.
Exactly. So the Taoists are saying, you got to be careful. You got to be willing to navigate the tricky parts, to avoid those flashy paths that are ultimately going to lead you astray. It's like finding that quiet path, the one that's less traveled, but is actually going to lead you somewhere worthwhile.
And that sometimes takes a little more work and a little more discernment to find.
For sure.
And then Thompson connects this to a concept for Martin Shaw, this wild twin idea, which I thought was so interesting.
Oh, I love that part. It's like he's saying, look, we all have these parts of ourselves that we try to hide, you know?
Right, right.
These wild, instinctual impulses that don't always fit in with what society expects of us. It's like
Yeah.
we exile these parts of ourselves to this metaphorical castle of social norms.
We want to fit in. We want to be accepted.
Exactly. But Shaw is saying, if you want to be truly happy, if you want to really flourish, you have to integrate that wild twin back into your life.
You can't just ignore it or pretend it's not there.
You have to find a way to bring those exiled parts of yourself back into the fold, in a healthy way, of course. It's about finding a balance between your primal nature and your social self. It's kind of like the concept of yin and yang, you know, these seemingly opposite forces that are actually interconnected and essential for balance.
So it's about accepting all of who you are, not just the parts that are easy or convenient.
Exactly. And that ties back to this whole idea of moderation. Finding that balance in all facets of your life and who you are is essential for true happiness.
Okay, so we've got happiness isn't just pleasure. Moderation is key. And now we're getting to the third pillar, which for a lot of people might be the most challenging one to really grapple with. Goodness is a prerequisite for happiness.
Yeah, this one really gets to the heart of things. It's about the ethical dimension of happiness. Thompson's basically saying that you can't really be truly happy in a deep and lasting way unless you're also striving to be a good person.
So it's not enough to just feel good. You have to be good.
Right. You have to live a good life. But of course, then the question becomes like, what does good even mean? It's a concept that can be so different depending on your culture, your beliefs, all of that.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there any kind of common ground when it comes to what good actually means?
Thompson acknowledges that, yeah, there's a lot of diversity in ethical thought, but he points to some really interesting work by philosophers like James Rachel and Paul Stearns. These guys argue that even though there are differences, there are also some core values that seem to be pretty consistent across different cultures and throughout history.
So like universal values. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, like these fundamental building blocks of ethical behavior that resonate with people across time and place.
Okay, and what are some of the values that Thompson highlights?
So one of the big ones is this tension between altruism and egoism. Like, how much should we focus on helping others versus focusing on our own needs and desires?
Yeah, that's a constant struggle for sure.
And it's fascinating to see how this idea plays out in different traditions. So, for example, in Islam, you have zakat, which is this practice of giving a portion of your wealth to those in need.
Oh, right, right.
That's a really clear example of altruism.
It is.
And then you look at something like Augustine's monastic codes, which emphasize selfless service and devotion. Or in philosophy, you have Peter Singer and his utilitarianism, which is all about maximizing well-being for the greatest number of people. Then you have Kant, who talks about these universal moral duties that apply to everyone. And of course, Aquinas with his Christian ethics that are centered on love and compassion for others.
So even though they come from different backgrounds and have different frameworks, they all seem to be saying that, like, being good, considering others is important.
Exactly. It's not just some optional thing, you know. It's actually fundamental to living a good life. And if living a good life is essential for happiness, then that means that, in a way, being good is actually a prerequisite for happiness.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. It's like goodness isn't just about following rules or doing what you're supposed to. It's actually connected to your own well-being.
Exactly.
And then Thompson goes on to talk about why this kind of deeper happiness can feel so elusive in our modern world. What's his take on that?
He makes a really good point. He says that we've got this really distorted view of happiness in our society.
How so?
Well, we're constantly bombarded with these perfect, idealized images of joy, right? Like the perfect vacation photo, the smiling selfie.
Social media is definitely guilty of that.
Oh, totally.
Mm.
And the problem is all of that focuses on external appearances, on what things look like from the outside rather than on that deep internal sense of contentment.
So it's like a smiling soul instead of just a smiling selfie, to use Thompson's words.
Exactly. And because we're so caught up in chasing these fleeting pleasures and trying to get external validation, we end up neglecting the things that actually matter for deep happiness.
Like those quieter, more meaningful aspects of life.
Yeah, like living a life that's grounded in virtue, in balance, in purpose.
It's like we're chasing a mirage, you know? We think we're going towards something real, but it's just an illusion.
It is. It really is. And Thompson points out that this can become a vicious cycle. You know, we set these goals for ourselves, wealth, fame, all that stuff, and we think that once we achieve them, we'll finally be happy. But what often happens is we get those things and we still feel empty.
You're on the hedonic treadmill and you can't get off.
Exactly. So what he's saying is we need to shift our focus.
Right.
We need to stop chasing those external things and start cultivating the things that actually lead to lasting happiness.
I like that. It's about changing your perspective.
Yeah, it's a big shift.
Now, I really liked how Thompson brings back those analogies toward the end of the article, the Daoist forest, the vampire trope, and the wild quinn myth. Could we just quickly touch on those again to really drive these points home for our listeners?
Oh, absolutely. Those analogies are so powerful.
You are.
So that Daoist forest metaphor, it's a great reminder that the easiest or most appealing path isn't always the best one.
Right. Sometimes you have to take the road less traveled.
Exactly. And then the vampire trope, that whole idea that vampires, they can have all the pleasure they want, but they're still miserable, that really highlights the emptiness of a life that's solely focused on sensory gratification.
They're never truly satisfied.
Never. And then the wild twin myth, that one reminds us that we can't just ignore those parts of ourselves that don't fit in. We have to find a way to integrate them, to make them a part of who we are. Otherwise, we'll never feel whole, and I'll never be truly happy.
So basically, accepting all of yourself and finding balance in all areas of your life.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Johnny Thompson's Philosophy's Guide to Happiness, what's the main takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think Thompson is really offering us a new way to think about happiness. It's not something you just stumble upon, you know, or something you can buy or achieve.
You have to work for it.
Yeah, it's something you cultivate. And he's saying that true happiness, that deep, lasting kind of happiness, it comes from living a virtuous life, from finding balance, from being true to yourself.
It's about aligning your inner world with your outer world.
Exactly. And I think that's a really powerful message, especially in a world that's so focused on external achievements and instant gratification.
It is. It's a call to look inward and to find happiness in the things that truly matter. So to recap, Thompson gave us those 3 pillars of happiness. 1, happiness isn't just pleasure. 2, moderation is essential. And 3, goodness is a prerequisite for happiness.
Such an important concept.
Now, for those of you listening, we really want to challenge you to think about how these ideas resonate with you. Like, which of those 3 pillars speaks to you the most right now, and why? How could focusing on that pillar help you create a more flourishing life? It's something worth really sitting with and reflecting on.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in reading Johnny Thompson's full article, you can find a link to it in our show notes.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another exploration of really fascinating ideas.
See you next time.
Take care.